The largest number of jobs are available in energy efficiency. And that can be done on every college campus, every public school building, every hospital, and every government building in the United States in a way that does not cost $1 more to the bottom line. Now, this is something I know about because I do this work around the world. Hillary's Energy Fund would trigger this all over America, create millions of jobs. Think about it. Every building, when you walk around tomorrow on campus, every building that's over a certain amount of years old, you can retrofit. You hire someone to come in and estimate how much it would cost to reduce energy use, let's say 30%. They'll say if you change the windows, you change the lighting, you put in automatic temperature and lighting controls, you green the roof, put sod on the roof so it's lower air conditioning in the summer, less heat in the winter. None of these jobs can be outsourced. You got to be where the building is. A lot of the jobs, sure, would be for college graduates like electrical engineers and architects. But a lot of the jobs you should care about in Pennsylvania could be for high school dropouts who could be trained as green-collar workers. Millions and millions of jobs. Clean energy, independent energy, it's the only strategy that will create jobs in every single part of America for all kinds of Americans to let us go forward together and save the planet from climate change. And the most important thing we could do to cut your costs right away is to quickly develop and make affordable a 100-mile-a-gallon car. And it's not like hydrogen cars. I've been in several hydrogen cars. They all cost between $250,000 and $500,000. We can run them, but we're a ways away from that. But there are at least a dozen of your fellow Americans that tonight are driving 100-mile-a-gallon cars, and they work pretty much like hybrids do, except with a hybrid car, you're on the battery to 25 miles an hour, and then it kicks into fuel. So you wind up with about 40 miles a gallon in town and about 30 on the highway, sometimes a little more. These cars run on a battery all day long without recharging until the night to 55 miles an hour. Once you do that, you're at 100 miles a gallon. Think of it. Once we get to 100 miles a gallon, we can say to the oil countries, please charge $100 a barrel for oil. Charge $200 a barrel oil. Charge whatever you please. We're going to save our $350 billion, keep it at home, and invest it in America's future, America's jobs, America's education, America's health care. That's what we ought to have. And why do you need the government to do that? Because these cars run on lithium batteries, and there is not now available enough lithium and enough production to make enough of these to make them affordable. Now, all of you know, much better than I do, that every product that's based on electricity goes down in price as it goes up in volume, right? Recently, flat screen TVs, iPods, iPhones, everything. Once you produce it, boom, you get the volume up, you get the price down. This will happen with these cars. But you need a president and a fund in federal government money to dramatically increase the production of these batteries. And that's what you need the next administration to do. Think of it. It could do so much so quick to fight climate change and make us more economically independent and put more money in the pockets of average hardworking families. Now, Hillary's position on this is simple. If the United States of America could beat the world to the moon, we surely can beat the world to clean coal and a car battery. And if you think that, I hope you will support her for president. Now, second thing we have to do if we want to grow the economy long term is to have more people like you. We have to make it possible for every young person in this country to go on to college and not to drop out because of the cost. And because I'm here at State College, I think it's worth going through the details very quickly. Here's our program. Raise the Pell Grants every year to keep up with inflation. Raise the tuition tax credit from $1,650 a year to $3,500 a year. Create a substantial number of new AmeriCorps community service projects for jobs so that you can save your own money for college. Crack down on the abuses of the private student loan companies that are charging up to 20% interest on these loans. This is a big deal. Now, when Hillary and I were in school, we were broke too, but we could borrow the money at 2% from the government. It's ridiculous for some of you to be paying 16, 18, 20% because of some deal that was made somewhere. This is wrong. When I was president, we had 10 million more young people getting college aid. They could borrow the money directly from the government. They saved $9 billion in loan repayment costs, and the taxpayers saved money because people didn't default on their loan when they could repay it. Now, this is important. And on this issue, you do not have to take Hillary's word for it. You can look at her record. She left the campaign trail and went back to the Congress to pass a bill she sponsored called the Student Borrower's Bill of Rights, which is law today. I wish I could tell you had to vote for it to get this, but this is law today. The bill says now, if you graduate from college with a debt, you have the absolute right to sign a contract to pay that debt off as a low fixed percentage of your income over a long period of time. You can never be bankrupted by your college debt. Now, why is this important? Why is this important? Because a college degree is worth more than $1 million to the person who has it and to the society as a whole. Every one of us has a vested interest in every one of you who are here finishing and going on with your dreams. It is crazy because of the rising cost of college that all over America now, young people are thinking, well, you know, when I get out, I'm going to take a job that doesn't pay much money. I can't possibly borrow another $10,000. I can't possibly borrow another $20,000. Look, $30,000 or $40,000 is peanuts compared to the long-term economic gain to all of us of your college education. That's why you ought to be able to pay your debt back no matter how much it is as a low percentage of your income over a long period of time. It will change the future for a lot of young people in America, and it's another reason you should support Hillary for president. And finally, she believes that when you get out of college, if you become a public servant, if you go into teaching, nursing, mental health work, if you're a police officer, a fireman, your service should repay your loan, and every year you serve, you knock some of that loan off. The next thing she thinks we should do in order to get this country going again is to have a new trade policy, which we cannot have without a new budget policy. And I want to say just a word about this. She favors reopening the trade agreements, putting labor and environmental standards in them, making sure we don't lose jobs just to slave labor someplace else so nobody wins, and repealing the provision of the tax code which now encourages the closing of American plants and the moving of jobs overseas. You shouldn't subsidize that. If people want to move their jobs, they ought to have the right to do it, but you shouldn't be subsidizing it. That's not right, and nobody intended it to be that way. But the fundamental problem with our trade laws today is they cannot be enforced. I mean, you wouldn't make a deal with somebody in state college you couldn't enforce. If you bought a car from a car dealer who didn't honor the warranty, would you ever buy another car from that person? Of course you wouldn't. But trade enforcement today is 1/5 what it was when I was president. I admit, you know, I like trade more than a lot of Democrats. I did. But look, we're 4% of the world's people. We have 22% of the world's wealth. We have to sell something to somebody. But if you make a deal, you have to be able to keep it. Both sides have to be able to enforce it. There is no trade enforcement. Why? Because of the deficit. Now, who do we have our biggest trade deficits with? China. Who's second? Japan. That's right. Who's third? South Korea. Who's fourth? Rotating oil sellers. Saudi Arabia, Canada, Mexico. Okay? Now, every day, your government has to borrow money to pay for millionaires' tax cuts and soldiers in Afghanistan and Iraq and education costs and everything else, health care. We do. We borrow money every day. Why? Because we abandoned the balanced budget policies that had paid down almost $600 billion on the national debt when I was president and added $4 trillion to the national debt and a $30,000 birth tax on every child born in Pennsylvania this year. We went back to trickle-down economics, and it got us in a lot of trouble.